Ever wondered how we measure a country's economic health? Ever heard of GDP? In the world of economics, GDP is a big deal. It stands for Gross Domestic Product, and it's like a country's financial health report card. It gives us a snapshot of how well, or not so well, a country's economy is performing. Whether you're a student, an entrepreneur, or just a curious mind, understanding GDP can give you a fresh perspective on the world's economic landscape. Well, GDP, or Gross Domestic Product, is the answer to these questions. So, what does GDP really mean? In simple terms, GDP, or Gross Domestic Product, is the total value of all goods and services produced within a country during a specific period of time. It's like taking a snapshot of a nation's economic activity. Let's visualize this with a simple example. Imagine a bakery. This bakery makes all kinds of delicious bread, from baguettes to sourdough. Now, to calculate the bakery's contribution to the GDP, we'd add up the value of all the bread it produces within a given time frame. This includes every single loaf, bun, and baguette. But remember, GDP isn't just about one bakery. It's about all the bakeries, factories, offices, and every other business in the country, all added together. It's about the value of the services too, like haircuts, car repairs, or medical checkups. So when we talk about GDP, we're talking about the total value of everything we produce, like bread in our bakery example. But how do we go about measuring GDP? Well, there are three primary methods that economists use to calculate GDP: the production approach, the income approach, and the expenditure approach. Let's start with the production approach. Imagine a car manufacturer. This approach measures GDP by adding up the value of all goods and services produced in a country over a specific period. So in the case of our car manufacturer, the value of all the cars produced would be part of the GDP calculation. Next up, we have the income approach. This method sums up all the income earned by individuals and businesses in a country. Let's consider a factory worker who assembles cars. The salary this worker earns for his labor would be part of the GDP under the income approach. Finally, there's the expenditure approach. This method calculates GDP by totaling up all the spending on goods and services in a country. Consider a person who buys a car. The money they spend on that vehicle would be part of the GDP calculation using the expenditure approach. So you see, each method gives us a different perspective on the economy. The production approach looks at what we create, the income approach considers what we earn, and the expenditure approach reflects what we spend. So whether it's by looking at what we make, what we earn, or what we spend, all these methods give us a measure of GDP. Now, you might be wondering, why does GDP matter? Well, let's think about it this way. The GDP is like the heartbeat of an economy. When the GDP is strong and growing, it's a sign that the economy is healthy. This often translates into more jobs being created and businesses thriving. More jobs mean more income, leading to more spending, and ultimately contributing to the economic cycle. On the other hand, when the GDP shrinks, it might signal a recession. This is when governments step in, using policies to stimulate the economy. For example, during a downturn, a government might increase its spending to kickstart the economy, creating public works projects that provide jobs and inject money back into the system. So the next time you hear about GDP in the news, you'll know it's about more than just numbers. It's about the health of our economy and our everyday lives. To wrap it all up, we've taken a deep dive into the world of gross domestic product, or GDP. We've unpacked it from its basic definition, a measure of the total value of all goods and services produced by a country in a specific time period. We've explored the different ways it's measured through the income approach, the production approach, and the expenditure approach. Each method offering a different perspective, yet all converging to give us the GDP. We also discussed why GDP is so important. It's not just an economic term, it's a reflection of a nation's economic health. It helps us understand the state of an economy, whether it's growing, stagnating, or declining. So there you have it, a snapshot into GDP, the economic health indicator of a country. Now you're equipped with the knowledge to understand what those economic headlines really mean.